That glowing rectangle heating up your pocket is an active war zone, and your attention is the territory being fought over by European regulators, rogue file-sharing operations, massive tech conglomerates, and your own digital hoarding habits.
Data from the latest European regulatory filings shows just how vicious this tug of war over your Android device has actually become.
We're pulling together tech journal articles and developer beta notes to navigate this conflict, from massive continental legislation down to the forgotten files choking your storage. Governments are actively dictating the code running on your screen. At the bottom of it all, you're leaving your device vulnerable to sluggish decay.
Start at the highest level of control with the European Commission's specification proceeding. They launched a massive offensive under the Digital Markets Act, targeting Google's Android artificial intelligence implementation.
The core issue driving this entire investigation is the preferential treatment Google gives to its own software. When you boot up an Android phone, Gemini is pre-installed. It gets special, deep system-level treatment.
Trace the software architecture to understand the severity of that access. A standard application sits in a restricted container. The operating system forces that application to ask for explicit permission to read your keyboard inputs or access your camera hardware.
But Gemini bypasses those restrictions completely.
Gemini operates within the foundation of the operating system itself. The European Commission views this structural advantage as a direct violation of fair competition.
Commission Vice President Henna Verkunen stated that interoperability unlocks the full potential of these technologies. The EU is demanding that third-party AI bots receive the exact same deep system access currently reserved for Google.
Note the specific hardware demands. This mandate includes allowing an alternative bot to be invoked system-wide via voice hot words or physical button presses on the device frame.
Activating a microphone with the physical button extends far beyond just waking the phone up with your voice. The EU wants these third-party systems to actively read the screen context.
Evaluate what that means for a user. Giving a third-party application the ability to read the screen means every piece of data rendered on the display is processed by an outside developer.
When you open a web page or a private text message, the alternative artificial intelligence gets the clearance to read that text instantly.
The demands include allowing these outside bots to generate proactive suggestions from your local data. This mimics the exact functionality of Google's Magic Queue feature. Google uses Gemini to scan your daily activity to offer suggestions based on your specific habits.
The European Commission believes a third-party developer should have the legal right to parse your local device data to provide competing suggestions. They're pushing for these alternative services to have the power to autonomously control installed apps on your behalf.
Review Google's early experiments with this exact feature on the Galaxy S26. Gemini was tasked with operating applications natively. It performed quite poorly in those early trials.
The EU suggests another developer might build a more competent tool. Giving them the necessary hardware access to run local models with high levels of performance is mandatory to make that happen.
The Commission specified that Google must create new application programming interfaces. Google must offer technical assistance to these competitors entirely free of charge.
Forcing Google to grant deep system access to third-party chatbots feels identical to forcing a homeowner to give every local handyman a master key to their house just to ensure fair competition. We're talking about granting an independent developer the ability to autonomously control applications running on my hardware. Tell me why another chatbot needs access to my private emails.
Track the historical behavior of these corporations. Tech monopolies routinely prioritize user privacy only when their market dominance is threatened. Google monetizes your behavioral data across its entire ecosystem, utilizing your searches to train algorithms and sell targeted advertising.
They built the walls around the Android ecosystem to secure their own revenue streams.
They invoke the language of privacy to justify locking out competitors who want access to the exact same behavioral goldmine. Google's senior competition counsel, Claire Kelly, characterized this regulatory move as unwarranted intervention.
She argued that forcing Google to open these pathways strips away the autonomy of device makers to customize their own products. She warned that mandating access to sensitive hardware drives up development costs.
Track the timeline on this proceeding. The European Commission is gathering feedback until May 13.
They will issue a final decision no later than July 27.
Failure to enact the required changes exposes Google to penalties reaching up to 10% of their annual global revenue. Paying a 10% global revenue fine feels like having your entire house repossessed because you painted the mailbox the wrong shade of blue. It's a catastrophic financial blow designed to force immediate
The
compliance.
financial threat is massive. It completely explains why Google is defending its European territory so fiercely. We see a totally different strategy playing out on a global scale regarding Apple's ecosystem.
Monitor the expansion of a feature called AirDrop over QuickShare. Google is expanding this tool to tunnel under Apple's walled garden to facilitate bidirectional file sharing.
An iOS or macOS user simply sets their AirDrop receiving status to Everyone mode.
Once that specific setting is toggled on the iPhone or Mac, the Android device locates the Apple hardware and transfers files directly. This bypasses the deliberate restrictions Apple built into their ecosystem.
Google originally launched this capability on the Pixel 10. They followed that by rolling it out to the Pixel 9, pushed it to the Galaxy S26 series, and Samsung users in the One UI 8.5 beta program received the update shortly after.
We just saw this expansion hit the Oppo Find X9 Ultra and the Vivo X300 Ultra.
These are high-end smartphones suddenly gaining the ability to push massive video files directly to an iPhone without requiring a third-party application. Wait, Google is playing the victim in Europe, complaining about forced interoperability under the Digital Markets Act while acting as a digital cat burglar to bypass Apple's ecosystem restrictions across the globe.
Do we expect a multinational technology conglomerate to operate with ideological consistency? This feature proves interoperability is entirely possible when it benefits the gatekeeper executing the invasion.
Breaking down the technical achievement required to make that connection happen reveals a highly aggressive engineering strategy. Apple engineered AirDrop using a proprietary blend of Bluetooth for device discovery and point-to-point Wi-Fi for high-speed data transfer.
It requires specific cryptographic handshakes to verify the devices connecting to the network. Google essentially reverse-engineered that handshake protocol.
By tricking the iPhone into recognizing the Android device as a valid AirDrop participant in Everyone mode, Google bypasses the need for Apple's explicit permission.
The inclusion of hardware from Oppo and Vivo signals that Google is moving this feature from a niche Pixel experiment into a standard Android capability available across multiple manufacturers.
Google knows that poor cross-platform file sharing creates friction for Android users trying to interact with iPhone owners. Apple uses that friction as a retention strategy.
They convince users to stay on iOS to avoid the degraded photo quality and the compressed video files transferred over standard text messages.
By quietly building AirDrop compatibility into the Android core, Google eliminates that friction. This makes it significantly easier for an iPhone user to justify switching to a Pixel.
They champion interoperability when it breaks down a competitor's wall. They fight interoperability when it threatens their own foundation.
Governments and mega corporations are fighting over the operating system architecture, but the device owner is the one dealing with the collateral damage of a sluggish, bloated phone. A slow device primarily suffers from digital bloat. Your hardware is completely fine.
Data from standard mobile usage shows that cached system logs and abandoned download folders consume gigabytes of storage within 6 months.
When your device storage nears maximum capacity, the solid-state drive struggles to find continuous blocks of free memory to write new data.
This fragmentation forces the processor to work harder, generating heat and draining the battery rapidly. Stuttering animations and delayed app launches are direct symptoms of this specific issue.
Leftover data from long-forgotten applications strangulates the phone's memory. You can execute a 10-minute routine to reclaim the original speed of the device without waiting for a regulatory mandate. The first step requires you to delete any application you no longer use.
Every forgotten game or utility app sitting in your app drawer occupies storage space and runs background processes. You must revoke the lingering permissions those apps hold. Trying to quickly open an app on a bloated phone feels like trying to run a sprint through waist-deep mud.
The physical components are capable of moving faster, but the environment prevents any momentum. Deleting those forgotten files clears the mud. The second step targets old files. You have to open the native file management application.
On a Pixel, it's called Files. On a Galaxy, it's My Files.
On a OnePlus, it's File Manager. Navigate directly to the Downloads folder and eliminate the forgotten data. We hold on to the most useless data out of sheer habit. Keeping a PDF of a 2019 takeout menu for a restaurant that burned down 3 years ago is a sign of an absurd emotional attachment.
Delete the menus and the outdated installation packages. Step 3 involves tweaking the home screen layout. Long press a blank area on your screen, open the home settings, and change the app grid size from the standard 4x5 layout to a denser 5x5 grid.
This puts more applications on a single screen, reducing the need to swipe through multiple pages constantly. In those same settings, enable the swipe down gesture for notifications.
This allows you to pull the notification shade down by swiping anywhere on the screen rather than stretching your thumb to the very top edge of the display.
Step 4 is optimizing the device settings to preserve power. Turn on dark mode immediately. Modern Android phones utilize OLED displays.
Each individual pixel emits its own light independently. Dark mode instructs the screen to turn off the pixels displaying black backgrounds. This significantly extends your daily battery life.
Review the privacy configuration for Step 5. Navigating Settings, select Privacy, and open the Permissions Manager. This dashboard exposes exactly which applications hold access to your location data, your contacts list, your microphone, and your camera.
Many applications request broad permissions during their initial launch and retain that access indefinitely. A weather application requires your location to provide an accurate forecast.
A standalone calculator app has zero technical justification for reading your contact list or tracking your GPS coordinates. Shut off any access that lacks a functional justification.
Controlling those specific toggles is the only way to enforce boundaries on your personal hardware. Developers design applications to gather as much behavioral data as the operating system permits.
Leaving those permissions active ensures continuous background monitoring.
Read the user agreements you rapidly scroll past. They explicitly state your data is the currency paying for the free software.
The European Commission might force the front gates open, and Google might pick the lock to Apple's backyard. But if you refuse to manage your own app permissions, you are the one handing over the keys to the entire house. Goodbye.